had to humanize myself to him. I had to show him that, look, not all women are bad. You know, we're not all cold. And I would even get in on it with him. I'd say, oh my gosh, yeah, your ex-wife, she's terrible. And, you know, your mom, oh my God, I can't believe she did those things to you. And he did share with me some really deep, personal, pivotal moments in his life. When he was a middle schooler, his mom said something to him and was just terrible. It was terrible. And he went into the chemistry class and he got pure ethanol and he drank it because he thought it would be easier for his family if he was dead. And so he had endured abuse and trauma in his life. Obviously, that justifies none of what he did. But you do see that in so many psychopaths and so many sociopaths and just people who do terrible things. It's a cycle, and it doesn't start with them having a great life 90% of the time. So, you know, we would talk and I would share things and he would share things, and it was this bizarre mixture of awesome conversation and brutal rape. I think there was maybe 2 days the entire time I was there that he didn't sexually assault me. One of his favorite things to do to me was to shove my head into water completely and watch me struggle until I would breathe it in. And then he'd jerk me out of the tub and he'd smack me around and thump on my stomach and chest until I woke up. And I spit out water and, incredibly sadistic. And you could very clearly see that he enjoyed what he was doing to me. And it didn't matter if I didn't cry or if I had no reaction or if I screamed out in pain. His behavior pattern and the abuse pattern never changed, regardless of what my reaction was. Because I tried. I was like, maybe if I don't cry, he won't keep hitting me. Because what if that's what he's looking for? He's looking for that, that emotional release. So if I don't acknowledge it, maybe he won't keep hitting me or, beating me or drowning me. And that didn't work. So I was like, all right, well, this hurts. I'm going to scream. And so I remember, this is pretty close to the end of my captivity.
How long did he have you captive for?
I would say almost 2 solid months. Just at that location. Because I got away shortly before Thanksgiving. I think it was a week and a half before Thanksgiving in November. So he didn't have me for long, but they don't have to have you for a long time. It felt like I didn't, when you're in a basement, there was one teeny tiny window, you kind of lose your sense of time. He noticed one day that I was really looking at the window. I had been watching this moth that was there for like 2 weeks, and I would watch this moth crawl around on the walls and fly around, and it was, I named it. It was my friend. And I was jealous of a moth. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a moth. And I had wanted to be a lot of things in my life, When I was like 10, I think I wrote down, what do you want to be when you grow up, for a school assignment? And I was like, Princess Ninja President, obviously. So like I had wanted to be a lot of things, but I don't. Yeah. But I never wanted to be a moth. But I did. I was like, okay, God, we could just switch places. It'll be fine. I'll live out my days as a moth. It'll be great. And, during this whole time, it was like I bartered with God. I was like, God, if you get me out of here, I'll do this. I'll just, the rest of my life, whatever you want, just get me out of here. You did all these amazing things in the Old Testament. Why don't you come down and do them again? And my begging turned to anger. And I would rage at him. And I said, if you're so powerful, why do these things happen? Why do you let them happen? And so this loving God that I had known all my life became my enemy. And I was very clear about that. But there were periods that things would happen. I don't know how long I was unconscious or what, but after a particularly violent drowning, I guess I took longer to come back. I don't know. I had, I guess what you could call a near-death experience, and that kept me going. Even though I was still really pissed off at God, he gave me just enough strength physically and mentally to endure. Now, I don't like to use his name. I could just call him the procurer.
Okay. Whatever you want.
He was an alcoholic, massively. He did not come down without a 6-pack of beer, vodka, whatever. I mean, he just drank and drank and drank and didn't really stop unless it was to, assault me or something. And so I picked up on that really quickly. I said, okay, that's his weakness. He drinks. This is great. So towards the end of it, I had really gotten to a point where I was just done. And I remember he was beating me one day, and I was hanging from the rafters. And at that point, I had given up trying to balance on my tippy toes, and so my shoulders were partially out of their sockets, and I was just done. I was like, all right, kill me. And I screamed at him, kill me. Just kill me. Because I knew that if he killed me, my family would be fine. And I wouldn't have to live through any more of it. And so I just screamed at him. I said, just kill me. Just kill me. I know you want to. And I egged him on to kill me. I'm sitting there, half unconscious, screaming at a psychopath to murder me. And it surprised him. He took a step back and he looked at me and he was so confused. I could see that he was so confused. And in that moment, he lost his power because it wasn't his choice anymore. I didn't care what happened to me. I kind of at that point resigned myself to ending up in a grave somewhere rotting where no one would find me. I had accepted that as a potential possibility. So he took a step back and he was so surprised. And then he kind of turned around and he walked upstairs and just left me there. And he left me there for a couple of hours. I remember by the time that he actually came back down and unhooked me, that I just collapsed to the ground and I couldn't move my arms, and it took me a good 45 minutes just to get circulation back into my hands. And to be able to actually fully breathe without my chest and my rib cage just, it sucked. Not fun. And so, he sat down and started drinking, and he brought 2 glasses down this time. Sometimes he would, he'd shove a glass at me, and, I either would drink it just to dull a little bit of the physical pain that I was in, or just to avoid pissing him off. Because he wanted company. He wanted it to be a party. So he came down, unhooks me. I'm on the ground for probably 45 minutes, and he didn't use the handcuffs. He had actually just used rope this time, and so he took the rope off, and I got life back into my hands and my body, and he's sitting there in the chair and talking to me, and he started talking about his ex-wife. And it was gonna go one of 2 ways, and I kind of just was like, I'm gonna take a risk, because either talking about his ex-wife and agreeing with him would either really infuriate him and cause him to assault me or beat me, or it endeared him to me, and he became significantly more friendly because I was on his side. But his reactions were not predictable. I thought that I knew what his reaction would be some of the time, and then he did the exact opposite. So I never knew. So I was like, all right, well, if he beats me again, I'll just end up unconscious. So what the hell? And I took a risk. And so I started talking about his ex-wife and his mom. And at this point, I know that she was pursuing him for a massive amount of child support, probably cost $40,000, $50,000, and was having a very difficult time doing it because of where he had his money. He had all of his money overseas. So trying to get him to give anything when A, she couldn't find him half the time, or B, if he was ever served with paperwork or anything like that, awesome, he's not an American citizen. Like there's not a lot you can force a non-citizen to do, even if you tell them that they have obligation, because they're living in the United States and they have children that are partially American. And so I took a risk and I started insulting his wife, and I got really into it. At that point I did have so much rage and hatred that I really it spilled out into my words. And every time I would, throw out an insult about his mom or his ex-wife, he'd take another shot. And, we cheers and he'd take another shot. Again, over and over and over until an entire bottle of vodka was gone. I wasn't drinking. Fortunately, he was already quite intoxicated when he came down. So I did the, throw it over your shoulder, or, you make it look like you're drinking when you're not. And I was the one that was refilling his glass. So it was a little bit easier to get away with it. And so he finished an entire bottle of vodka. And by that point, he had decided that he wanted to assault me again. And so he threw me onto the bed and was unable to perform because he was so intoxicated. So he slapped me across the face and passed out on top of me. And I was like, okay, this is great. I can't move. It was very heavy. Turns out that belly, that gut came from drinking. He's an alcoholic. So I kind of sat there for a second just to make sure that he was really out. And then I slowly just wiggled out from underneath him as carefully as I could without jostling him too much. And there was a point where he, mumbled something and I just froze. I was like, oh my God. And then he just, started snoring again. And so I get up and I just look around for a second. And then I go kind of wash myself off. He had thrown a rag at me earlier, and so I kind of cleaned myself up and put on the outfit that he had thrown down the stairs a couple of weeks back, and it was ripe. I did not smell good. By this point, the lack of food that I had been getting in combination with the physical abuse and just my body was, I knew about a week prior to this that if I didn't get out of there, I wasn't going to be able to, because I wouldn't have been able to make it up those stairs. I did not have the physical strength. And I prayed really quick and I was like, God, get me through this. Please, please, please. Like, please let the door be unlocked, please. And so I'm sitting there trying to get my stuff on, and he had left the handcuffs that he used all the time on the little side table by the chair. And so I looked at him and I was like, oh my God. So I grabbed him, and as carefully and gently as I could, I cuffed his left hand to the bed, like he had done to me hundreds of times. And then I ran up, well, I say run, it was more like a really gentle crawl with a lot of wincing in between, up the stairs, trying not to make the stairs creak, because they would always creak. Like you get halfway down and there was this one stair that was just, and so it did. And I froze and I listened and I didn't hear anything. So I kept going and I turned the knob, and I couldn't turn it at first because my hands were so sweaty, super sweaty hands. There was some blood on them too, but so I couldn't turn it. So I was like, oh my God, it's locked. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to try it with my shirt. And so I grabbed my shirt and wrapped it around the knob, and it turned all the way. And I froze for a second, and I was like, oh my God, like it's happening. Oh my God, it's happening. And then I don't know why. I do. I mean, I knew in that moment when I walked back down the stairs to do what I was about to do that I needed to, if he was going to wake up, he was going to come for me. And I knew that. It was just a matter of time, and I needed to delay that as much as possible. So I knew that he would wake up usually about 2 to 3 hours after he would completely pass out drunk. That was after an entire bottle of vodka, it only took 3 hours to sleep it off before he was up and running again. And that's just the nature of alcoholism. The more you take, the easier it is for your body to adjust to those levels. So I knew I had a limited amount of time. And so I needed to make sure that he didn't wake up. Or if he did, that, he wasn't in the greatest shape. So before I really registered what I was doing, I had crossed the room. I had picked up the empty bottle of vodka, and it was a heavy bottle. It was a decent. I mean, I'm sure it was quite expensive. The label was in a different language, so I picked it up and I walked over to the bed where he was laying handcuffed, and I smashed it into his head as hard as I could, and it broke. And I had, little shards of glass in my hands, and I stepped on a few, and I saw, blood welling up from his head. And he...
I'm not a violent person, but good job.
It felt good. It did. So he moaned, but he didn't wake up. And so I was like, okay. So I just ran upstairs at that point. Again, I struggled with the door because now my hands were all, bloody, and there was shards of glass in my hand. And I opened the door, and I was like, okay, well, now what? I don't even know where I am. I had no idea. I knew that I was in the South, just because of the humidity, and Sammy had a vague idea of where we were. And by the grace of God, my bag that he had made me pack was right next to the door. He never touched it. My cell phone, my laptop, everything was there. My wallet was there. Everything. I don't know why my cell phone bill was why they hadn't shut it off. It was still working. It was still on. I still had cell phone service, but I didn't actually find out where I was until my phone asked me to enable the location. And I found out that I was in Mississippi. And because I knew that I had to get out of there, and I didn't necessarily know. I found one credit card left in my wallet. He had taken the rest of them, but I had hidden like a Capital One credit card behind, in between some, I think it was like a Starbucks punch card and like a Great Harvest punch card, because I love Great Harvest. They're fantastic. I'm a carb girl. And I found it, and I was like, oh my God, it's still here. My ID was still there, like everything. It was crazy to me. It was like it just sat there the entire time I was there. And so as quickly as I could, I purchased an airplane ticket online to take me back home, and called the shuttle. And I walked outside, and I had pushed it was like a console table, like a really heavy console table up against that door. Because I knew if he woke up, it didn't matter that he was handcuffed to a bed. It was only a matter of time before he came for me and my family. And I was right. And that is exactly what ended up happening. So I quickly texted my mom. I think I left a voicemail for my dad. And I said, don't answer any calls. Do not answer any text messages. Someone will contact you. He's going to say a lot of really crazy, scary things. Don't listen to him, please. Just wait for me to get home. I'll explain everything. And that was that. And so the shuttle guy arrives, and I'm standing outside, and he looks at me for a second, and I can tell he's like, something's not right. But he didn't really say anything. He just took my bag, and I got in the car. It was a van, and he turned on the radio. And I realized that I hadn't heard music in 4 months, about 4 months, nothing. What is it? It was Philip Phillips' Home came on. And man, I feel like throughout my life, God has talked to me and communicated with me through music. I have a very unique relationship with music. And it's always been a source of comfort and joy. There's a song that matches every single human emotion. So that song came on, and I just lost it. I mean, I started crying, and I started laughing, and this guy is looking at me in the rearview. And to his credit, he didn't say anything. He just let me have my moment. And so we get to the airport, and he gets my bag, and he's like, have a pleasant journey. And I walked into the airport, and I got on my plane, and there were a couple of people that looked at me, that I had lost a pretty significant amount of weight. But for the most part, everything was covered. I made sure to wear long sleeves and pants so no one saw the marks, because I didn't want anyone to stop me or ask any questions. And so I got on the airplane, and I knew I was going to have a layover in Maryland. And by the time I landed, he had freed himself by this point, and he had started to send me text messages. And it just, he would, the first one I remember reading just said, "You're exactly like the rest of them. You're just like my bitch wife. You're just like my disgusting mother. I knew you would do this to me. I'm gonna kill myself." I had offended him. I
wish he did.
Pardon?
Good riddance. I wish he did.
Yeah, but they were just very specifically targeted messages to induce me into a guilt trip and to get me to be absolutely terrified. And it worked. You know, I called my mom again and called my dad and told him, like, don't answer. My dad already had. He already had spoken with him. He'd had a conversation. And the man who did this to me threatened my father, who is, you know, quite a prominent member of our community, as well as the business that he's been in for 30 plus years probably. He threatened him, saying that, like, "Oh, well, I'm going to say that you raped your daughter, and I'm going to report this to your employer, and you're going to get fired, you're going to lose everything." Just anything that could instill fear and get them to play his game. And my dad's a smart guy, and so he's like, yeah, good luck proving that. And I think he hung up on him. My dad, he's like the quietest person in the world. He doesn't speak up or really say anything unless he has something to say. He's very, very quiet. He's the smartest guy I know. And he wasn't going to let some guy mess with him like that. You know, he wasn't intimidated by it. So I got on my next flight. This one was going to take me to Salt Lake City. It was my last flight, my final one. I was in the exit row of the airplane, which was great because I'm super tall. I'm 5'11". I have long legs. Me in planes and small confined spaces, not great. So I was like, great, I'm in an exit row. I can stretch my legs. There was no one sitting next to me. So I had the window seat, and I just started crying. And I was, turn my head away so no one would see me. And by then I had mastered the art of crying very quietly, making no noise. So I was silently just sobbing. And the stewardesses walk by, and they have their cart with their snacks and their drinks. And she took one look at me, the stewardess, and she knew. She just knew. She was like, and she's like, she gestured to the stewardess that was on the other side of the car, and she's like, take this, just get it done. I'm going to talk to her for a second. And so she sat down, and you know when someone asks you if you're okay and you're not okay, and just them asking you, are you okay? It's like, and then it's a flood. It's a flood. And so I lost it. And I am like just hysterically crying, still like quite quietly because I didn't want to disrupt anyone else. And I told her everything. And she grabbed my hand, and she was holding it, and she's just squeezing it. And she's like, oh my God. And she's like, no one's going to hurt you again. You're okay. It's safe. And she hugged me, and she's like, I'm going to go talk to the captain really quick. Hold on just a minute. And then she ran and got me like one of the nice first class cheese and salami plates. And I was like, oh, this is so fancy. And I was so excited because it was food. And I was like, oh my God, I'm starving. I ended up actually getting sick because I ate too fast and my stomach had shrunk so far. But I vomited. But boy, did it taste good going down the first time. And so, she moved me to the back of the airplane because, you need to be of sound mind and body if you're going to sit in an exit row. Just in case the plane goes down, you need to be able to assist other people. And so she explained that to me until she moved me to the back of the plane and brought me some food and went to go talk to the captain. And then she came back and she sat with me and she said, okay, so this is what's going to happen. The captain radioed ahead to Salt Lake Airport. When the plane lands, no one's going to get off. I'm going to take you to the front of the plane. We're going to have a couple of officers meet you there, and then they're going to take you to the police station that's at the airport. And, you know, when she said like police, I'm terrible. I always have this image in my head of like the mall cops, right? Or like the cop that's like super heavy and can't catch the bad guy because he's eaten way too many donuts. So that's what I was thinking was going to come on. I was thinking like just security officers or like, you know, like a couple like, you know, lower level cops. So when we landed, she takes me to the front of the plane, and it's, you know, and there's 3 FBI agents there. Huge dudes. These are like scary guys, all dressed in black, typical FBI. They had the jacket and everything. And I was terrified. Because I thought it felt like I was in trouble. You know, I was so scared. And so, you know, they come and they escort me off the plane, and they took me to an SUV, and there was a woman there, thankfully, because I was very scared to be alone with any guys. And so she was like, you know, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. And this whole time I was just like, I just want my mom. Can I call my mom? Did you call my mom? Are they coming? Are they here? And I think I was at that station for 2 or so hours, maybe 3. And I just kept asking that the whole entire time. And it's kind of interesting. So when you see people being interviewed in the movies or TV or whatever, you know, they're asked to start from the beginning. And that's not how you're questioned or how the FBI collects information. They ask you to go back in time. So I had to go back through the day that I had just experienced and everything. And it was very difficult for me to make my brain move that way because of how just chaotic everything was. And so they're asking me questions, and they're doing their best just to reassure me that it's going to be okay. And my cell phone had been sitting in the interview room on the table. So it was a big conference table in between myself and the agents. And the phone goes off, and it's him. And I lost it. I jumped out of my chair, and I ran to the corner of the room, and I curled up in a ball in the fetal position, and I just screamed. And I was just screaming, he's gonna get me, he's gonna find me, he's gonna hurt me, he's gonna hurt my family, please, please, please. And so of course, you know, that one of the agents takes the phone, runs out of the room, and the other ones are like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And they, you know, the female agent, she just got down on her knees and sat with me until I was able to get up and move back to the table. And I kept asking, I was like, well, are my parents here? Are they coming? And by that point, the agents told me that, you know, no, for whatever reason, they don't want to come. And I didn't understand. I was like, I want my mom. I just want my mom, please. Well, what if I talked to her? Because they didn't want me using my cell phone at that point. So I tried to call, and I didn't answer. They didn't pick up. And I later found out that it was because they thought they were in trouble. And they thought that they were going to get in trouble. And, you know, once the agents reassured my parents that, like, they weren't the ones in trouble, you know, they finally came down. And that only happened when I was en route to Salt Lake Regional to have my rape kit done. And so they did the rape kit, and I had to undress. And typically you don't see people that work in healthcare have a lot of reactions to things. You know, they see it every day. They're very used to it. They're very used to what they see. When I undressed, because my back was the worst, my back and my legs, I just heard her gasp. And then she very quickly, quieted down, and, you know, and she was so sweet. She was telling me, you know, what was going to happen. She said, okay, you know, I'm gonna mark down on this chart, you know, where your bruises and cuts are. And they clipped my fingernails, and I think they even took some of my hair. I don't remember though. I'm not sure. They took my underwear and my clothing, and the swabs, the whole nine.
Yeah,
And,
are always the most gentle processes.
yeah. So she was just great. So they got me in a hospital gown, and she stopped writing on that chart after a while because she ran out of room. There wasn't any more room. So I don't know if she started a new one or just started writing notes. And so, the nurse comes in, and by this point, my mother had arrived, and I was just inside the emergency room. So I was in that, like, the closest room to the waiting room area. And so I could hear my mom. And my dad hadn't come for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. A family friend of ours who we've known for years drove her. And so I hear the agents explaining what happened over and over, probably 3 or 4 times. And it just wasn't sinking in for her. She's like, no, I don't understand. Like, I don't, what? She didn't believe them. She didn't believe them. It took her coming in and actually seeing me physically and seeing the condition that I was in for her to believe it. And so she comes in and she just grabs me and she hugs me. And I just start crying. And I remember, like, I think I had to ask her, like, just not, like, squeeze so tight it hurts. And so that night is still kind of like a little bit, there's parts of it that I can't quite, like, pinpoint exactly when things happened. But I remember, signing the release forms because I wasn't in such terrible condition. I mean, I was in pretty bad shape, but not that they needed to keep me overnight after they had done the rape kit. And so they, they talked to her a little bit more, give her their card. They said that this, any text messages, any phone calls, do not delete any of that. That's evidence in an ongoing investigation, that we need that. And so she was like, okay. And we drove back up to the town that they were living in. And, she got me into the shower, and my mom is a really tough lady. She doesn't really have reactions to things that would probably, like, make most people super grossed out, or, like, she's got a strong stomach. But she had to sit down. She had to sit down on the toilet for a second because she was just, and so I get out of the shower, and she, got me into a robe and takes me downstairs to the guest bedroom. She's like, it's okay, you're gonna sleep here. Everything's gonna be okay. And I got about maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep before we were all woken up by some very, very loud knocking. And so, I immediately wake up. I don't even think I'd really truly fallen asleep. I still really struggle with falling asleep and staying asleep, just because of all of this. And so I was up. I ran upstairs. I was so scared. I was just scared that it was him. I was scared that he'd found me, that he had, Well, it turns out the Ogden police had received a call, and it was, the person who had done this to me, asking them to do a wellness check because I was threatening to kill myself, and I was in danger, and he played the part of a friend who was concerned. And by this point, I believe that the FBI had actually updated my local police department and had kind of given them a ballpark idea of what was going on. Because when they showed up to our house, they said, oh, no, we've been running all over town trying to find you. We went to your, apartment that your mail goes to in Layton, and, we went to your childhood home that was listed on my ID, and I wasn't there. By that point, my parents had actually sold that property, or were renting it, I think, and had moved into the place that they were at. And so, they told me, we ran all over town. We know what's going on. We just want to make sure that you're okay. And, I was just like hysterical again. Because I was like, I just want to sleep, please. I just want to sleep. So my mom's like, no, it's fine. And so they asked me, like, are you okay? Do you feel safe with these people? And I said, yes. And so they were like, okay, call us if you need anything. We know what's going on. We're here for you. And they left. And he proceeded to continue to do that. And so because he had access to all of my social media, he was stealing people's profile pictures, because by this point I had shut almost everything down. I had turned on the privacy. I had unfriended almost every single person except for the very few. I think I had created an entirely new Facebook page. But because he had access to all of that information for so long and had actually pretended to be me, he would steal profile pictures from girls that I had gone to these boarding schools with who were sisters to me. So of course I'll answer their call. And he would call me pretending to be them. Or he would, email me or something. He was always trying to contact me. This continued probably up until about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. All the way up until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long ago did this happen?
So this happened to me in 2013. So I'm going on almost 8 years this November.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And I think potentially even last year, because I received a message that kind of had his trademarks, the language, the wording, so he continued to do that. And by this point, the FBI had decided that they were going to pass the case back to the jurisdiction in which it happened. I still really don't know why they decided to do that, if they decided that it just wasn't a big enough deal, or I don't know, maybe I didn't give them that key thing that they were looking for.
Wait, Mississippi police?
Yeah, so the FBI was the one that was handling the case initially, because when I freaked out in midair in an exit row of an airplane, and because the crime had now technically crossed state lines, with the harassment coming from, at that point they had taken the case because of those circumstances. Anytime anything happens on an airplane, the FBI is involved, no matter what. Yes. So they, talked to us and they said, we're going to pass your case back to the jurisdiction in which it happened, which would have been Mississippi. And we've called them, we've told them what's going on. We sent your kit over there, so they have everything. And so I said, okay, this is just gonna be more difficult now because you're not dealing with people in the same state. So I was like, okay, but still, I was very much so like, let's get this guy. I want to get it. And my mom was like, we're gonna get him. He's never gonna do this to anyone again. And the police dropped the ball big time. And I don't know if the FBI had anything to do with that, if there was a failure to communicate or a failure to properly send my case and documents and evidence through the correct channels. But I called, we called and we said, okay, have you guys gotten everything? And they're like, who are you? And I told them, and nothing.
Great.
Nothing. They had nothing. And the first couple of times I called, they were very courteous and apologetic even, and patient. They would sit and talk to me for a little bit. As time continued, and it did, this was almost a year of calling, emailing, really anything, just trying to get them to listen to me. After a couple of months, the friendly, apologetic tone turned into getting put on hold a lot, getting hung up on, being laughed at.
Being laughed at? They laughed at you?
They laughed at me.
I am appalled. I'm abhorred.
Well, small town South. you know? That's not an excuse for poor police work or
That is
anything, but that stereotype that you really hear about in the South with teeny itty bitty towns and police having better stuff to do apparently is very, very true. They made it clear that they had better stuff to do than talk to me or take care of this, get this guy put away. And so by this time, you know, I had just, after so long of trying and getting nowhere, I was like, all right, we move on. You know, that's all you can do. I think about a month, like 2 or 3 weeks after I got back and after living with my parents and staying in their guest bedroom, a combination of my PTSD and just, I think my mother maybe trying to just push me in a direction because she thought that if I was able to work or like, you know, get some type of schedule back, that things would get better. And so I think I maybe had like a 3-week break after everything where I kind of got to hang out and like heal a little bit before they're like, get a job now, get a job. So I got a job as a Starbucks barista and, you know, kind of did what I had done my whole life, which was just pretend to be okay. I had learned very quickly that as long as you put a smile on and you're bright and perky, you can fake it and no one will know. And so I did that for a very long time. And I ended up with a pretty nasty case of PTSD. Not that any case of PTSD is good, but mine was particularly aggressive, I guess. My flashbacks consisted of like full body, you know, I wouldn't be able to see the room around me. I saw everything that I remembered that was there and I would relive it and it would catch me by surprise. You know, you don't really get a warning. It just happens. You know, you're driving and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to pull over because I might crash because I can't see or I can't breathe or I can't hear. Like there's such a, and to some degree, I do wonder if the severity doesn't have something to do with the fact that he drowned me and brought me back constantly during the time. So I do wonder if there may be a little bit of damage, brain damage that was done that causes me to have, I had a couple of seizures, psychogenic seizures, non-epileptic. It's just a portion of how my body handles and processes my PTSD and trauma. So, you know, I got a job, stayed there, gave all of my money to my mom. She was in control of my finances because at that point it was kind of like, I don't know if it was how she meant to come across, but it was like, well, clearly you're not very responsible because look what just happened. So she was in control of my finances and, you know, all of my money went to pay either the hospital bill or, and so here's another thing that I just want to stress the importance of that I wasn't told. There is such a thing called victims' reparations. There are charities, there are institutions, there are people who will pay for sexual assault victims to have their rape kit. They'll take care of the hospital bill, all of those things. I did not know about that. So other than the very brief hospital stay, which turned into, I think it was like a $7,000 bill. They helped with a portion of that, the hospital charity did, but the rape kit I paid for myself because the Mississippi, whatever that department is that deals with that, they're like, nah, it's not ours. It's not our problem. We're not going to give you a grant to pay for it. So to add insult to injury,
right now,
to pay for my own rape kit.
There are so many things right now that like I could spend the next like 5 hours like highlighting on.
Yeah.
Victim should pay for their own rape kit. I mean,
yeah.
That is like.
Yeah. No, and I did. I mean, I spent the next probably a year and a half throwing every single dollar that I made at my hospital bills because that's what I was left with. And so any money that I made from my barista job, which was not a lot, went directly towards paying bills, medical bills. So, you know, I worked and got a job, a better job, and finished school and got my driver's license. And so I I went through the motions of normality, and I pretended to be fine, you know, and I was so absolutely not fine. And it took 3 years for this to really catch up to me that I was not okay. And that ended with me just saying, I'm done. And I drank and I took some pills, and my mom found me, and because I had kind of stopped going to work because I was pretending to go to work. I drive my car there, it's in the parking lot for a minute, and then I go home. Because I couldn't do it. But I was still pretending, right? Because it had been 3 years, I should be fine by now, right? Everyone expects me to be fine. And I was not. And so that ended with a confrontation between myself and my mother about me not going to work when I said I was at work. Because I was just trying to hide from the world. And this whole time, you know, something that I really think is important is the way that people handle stress and pressure and the outside appearance that they have absolutely has nothing to do with the inside appearance. I would still do my makeup, I would still do my hair, I would still get dressed. I was very presentable. So I looked fine, right? Completely fine. But I was not. It was an act, it was a show. So that ended in a confrontation about me not going to work, and by that night I was just done. And so I drank a bunch, and I took some stuff, and got a few little cuts in before I was like, if I'm gonna kill myself, it's not gonna be like this. I'm just gonna, you know, I didn't want the physical pain of it. I just wanted to numb everything out. So I didn't go to work. My house, my car was still in the driveway, I think, and my mom showed up to my house, knocking on my door, banging on my door. And I could hear it, but because I was so out of it, you know, I didn't get up or anything like that. I just stayed on my bed, like kind of like half in, half out of it. And so she called the sheriff's department, and a bunch of sheriffs busted into my house, grabbed me pretty aggressively. Let me tell you, the police department that handled that were not trained to handle people that are dealing with mental health issues or anything like that. I was treated like I had just broken a law, which evidently I had. When you try to kill yourself, you lose your rights. So they pink slipped me, which means they forcibly admit you without your consent to the hospital. And I was evaluated there, and the person who was evaluating me, you know, I just told her, I was like, look, obviously I am not very good at killing myself. It didn't work. Probably not going to try it again. It isn't the greatest feeling in the world. And you know, I'll just go stay at home with my family. It'll be fine. The evaluator was like, no. And so she ordered me to be transferred to the psychiatric unit of hospital in Bountiful. And here's another thing that I would love to mention. Doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, if you have a patient that is already struggling deeply financially, and you forcibly admit them to the hospital and then force them to take an ambulance ride, but maybe it took 15 minutes, and they can't afford to pay the bill in the first place. And part of the reason why they're under so much stress is because of financial. A lot of the time, survivors are, you know, after the whole thing is over, you're left with a lot of medical bills, and you're left with a lot of just bills in general, either from not being able to work, and just it just doesn't. It's not just something that messes with your mind and your body. It's also very it heavily impacted my financial situation, and that was one of the reasons why I was so stressed. And so I told him, I was like, look, can my parents just drive me to the hospital, please? You know, I promise, like, everything, I'll go. I don't have a problem going, but I need them to drive me. I can't afford the ambulance bill. And Dr. Olson at Ogden Regional said, no. Nope, you got to take the ambulance. I had parents that were willing to drive me, that would have taken me there. There was not an option. If I was discharged, they would have taken me immediately to Lakeview Hospital. And instead I had to pay about $4,000. I'm still paying on it for the ambulance bill, for like maybe like a 10 or 15 minute drive and like a couple of gallons of gas. And I'm like, since when do you use different gas than I do? Because I fill up my tank for like $30. So why does gas in an ambulance cost me $2,000? So I get there, I tell her tell the psychiatrist what's going on. And by this point in my life, because I had been in and out of facilities and, therapists, I know how to work the system, and I did. So I told them what they wanted to hear, and they put me on it's called Prasazin. It's a medication that helps with, typically it's used for blood pressure, high blood pressure, but they give it to people with PTSD because it lowers your blood pressure, so you're not, your body isn't inducing that fight or flight. Didn't really work for me. I would get up and pass out every morning. So, I told them what they wanted to hear. I got out and I continued to struggle. I was incredibly destructive to myself, and I didn't see a point in living, and by this time I had given up on ever getting any justice or getting him put away. And because he was still contacting me, I never knew when the next message would come. So I was just always looking over my shoulder. And it took a massive toll on me mentally, but I just, I still tried. I went and I got another job and kept paying on these bills and kept going. And eventually one night, I got down I just fell on my knees. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And I was like, God, please don't do whatever you want, please. I just can't do it. I can't do it on my own anymore. And so I called my mom, I think, and she prayed with me on the phone, and again, things started to improve. I really tried to push myself to go to church, even though it was a real struggle for me to be around that many people, because I'm always on high alert. So I'm not good with crowds. But I forced myself to go to church. I ended up getting baptized, actually for the second time, because I got baptized when I was pretty little, but I don't think I truly understood what it meant. Even though I had spent a lot of time being angry at God, I knew that he had to have more for me, than what had happened. There has to be more. And little by little, things got better. And my progress was not linear. It was all over the place. I'd have a really great couple of months or a couple of really good days, and then just awful. But things started to get better. I had a job. I got baptized. I was doing all of these things. And, I was just, I had a little bit of hope. And it turns out a little bit of hope gets you a long way. Because, I ended up landing a fantastic job, got a new apartment, and kind of rebuilt everything that had been taken from me. And, throughout this time, I had expectations of myself, because it had been so long. I should be better by now. I should be okay. My family expects me to be okay. And I didn't want to share it with them. And they didn't want to hear. They made it pretty clear that I gave my mom a couple of details. She probably knows more details than anyone else, but she still has absolutely no idea what I actually went through physically. And because of that, and because they just didn't really, I don't think they really ever took the time to educate themselves on PTSD and what that means and how to handle a family member that has it. So that strained things, and there was tension there. And I remember I was driving back to my apartment after work one day, and I had a really, really bad flashback, and I had to pull over because I couldn't see, and I couldn't, so I was grabbing the steering wheel, and I was grabbing it so tight because I just had to hold on, because I had to ground myself. Anytime I have a flashback that's on that level, I have to actually physically, like, okay, I can feel the floor. Okay, I can feel my hair. I can feel, so you go through kind of these steps to bring yourself back down. And I had started listening to a lot of K-Love, because I loved it. It was songs that were all filled with hope and promise, and so I just constantly had it on. And a song came on, and oh my God, it could not have been more perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect. And like in that moment, I mean, I don't know. You could probably say, oh, it's just the DJ, whatever. The songs are set to play in advance. It's not a thing. But I remember Whom Shall I Fear by Chris Tomlin came on. And in that moment, I was filled with fear. I was so scared. My body was just telling me to run, and I was terrified. And one of the lyrics in that song, sorry. One of the lyrics in that song says, I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. And in that moment, I just gave it up. It's like, okay, God, you can have this because I can't do it. I'm so not equipped. And, it took a lot of time. It did. But it was every single day, it was choosing joy over pain. There's another Christian song that says something about the pain is in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And for me, that was really true because my PTSD was it was bad at night. But like I would wake up in the morning and I would just be so grateful. I said, okay, God, you gave me another day. You gave me one more day. And I do. I wake up every day and I still struggle really hard with some of the things that I've experienced, but I don't have to be afraid. I know God's got my back. I know He was with me every single step of the way. Even when I was furious with Him and I told Him I hated Him. And I am so lucky to have been able to get away from that situation and to be able to have the opportunity to talk to the people that I do, to go outside for a walk when you're held captive for that long. And then you get back to normal life. Like it's the tiniest things, like the most blasé normal things that people are just like, oh, whatever. You're like, oh my God, no, this is the best thing ever. You don't understand. Like taking a shower and being able to like clean yourself. Oh my gosh, this is heaven. And so it just, it's a lot of appreciating the things that I did not experience for quite a while that I now get to experience every single day. And I don't take any of it for granted anymore. At all.
You're so amazing for being able to share your story. I mean, it's such a huge deal. Like it's, sitting here and listening to it, like, it is hard to hear. It's hard to believe that there is such a dark side to humanity. I don't even want to call humanity because when I say that word,
right.
Humanity makes me think it's good.
Right.
Tied to life. It's so hard to hear that because you want to believe the best in people.
Absolutely.
And hearing your story and seeing you here now and talking about how your faith helped you find your way back and
yeah.
God, I mean, it's inspiring. It's really, really powerful, really inspiring.
I know, Cathy, I wish we did this podcast in person because I think I would be I want to just wrap my arms around you. Like, you're so brave. You're so strong. You're such a hero. You're such a beacon of light. You've taken all of that asshole. Sorry, beat that out, Dave. But you've taken all this power away. You're here.
Yeah.
And you're helping so many other people. I am just so honored that you.
No, I'm honored to be a part of it. You know, I spent so long hiding everything about what happened to me from people because I didn't want them to look at me like I was a freak or that I was broken. Because if they looked at me and said she's broken when I really actually was, it just, you know, again, it's like when someone asks if you're okay and you're not okay, and it's just everything comes out. So I spent a really long time not talking about it. You know, I'm sure my family told some relatives or, you know, but I didn't. It was never something that I was able to talk about or wanted to talk about until probably within the last year. And again, it was just, I don't want to be the person that sits on a wealth of information about how predators operate. And having had such personal close-up experience with being trafficked and not use that information to help people. Because the man that did what he did to me got away with it. He's probably done it to God knows how many other women by now. And I can't do anything, but I can do this, and I'm going to.
I think it's amazing. You're incredible.
Yeah.
If there's anything that Mio or I or the foundation can do for you, I mean, we will back you as much as we can.
I just want to help. You know, I worked in sales a lot my entire life, and it's kind of funny. You know, when you come back from an experience like that changes you dramatically, and you're trying to sit here and you sell people on stuff that they really don't need, and you know, so I just want to help. I want to actually make an impact. You know, I could sell someone an awesome product and they'll love it and they'll have it in their homes, but ultimately that has absolutely zero impact on the world around me. And if I can prevent anyone from going through what I went through because I'm sharing this information, that's enough for me.
Well, you're amazing, and you definitely are doing that by speaking out, by sharing your story, by honestly opening up like that vulnerable side of yourself again.
Yeah.
You'll never know the number of people that you impact, and even if it was just one person, I mean, one person can change a world. Right.
Absolutely.
I wish we could talk all day because I have so many questions for you, but I can actually hear my kids screaming in the other which I'm really sorry.
Oh, I bet.
I would love to have you on again, Cathy, and do a follow-up. And I really want to actually delve into the legal part and
I would love to. Yeah.
All of that. So please come back.
Absolutely. 100%. I would love to. You guys are doing seriously such an amazing thing. And, you know, I went through a period of time, especially when there are a lot of these cases that are there's just a ton of media coverage. With Elizabeth, there was a massive amount of media coverage involved in your particular case, and there continued to be quite a bit after you came home. Even with, I don't know, the Ariel Castro case, where those women were, you know, trapped in his house. And so there's a lot of these cases, the JC Lee Dugard case, these cases where there is a lot of media attention that is surrounding these women, telling their story and to some degree acting as an advocate for them. But I had a moment several years ago where I kind of got mad. I was like, why didn't anyone look for me? Why didn't that happen to me? You know? And he's like, well, that's crazy. Like, I shouldn't ever be mad about that. But there are so many people who go through this that no one knows about. Nobody knows. It's not publicized. It's not advertised. It's not blown up in the media. But it happens every single day to hundreds of women, hundreds, thousands. and no one knows about it. People just think,
Absolutely.
yeah, and it happens under their noses. It happens because predators use social media, they use dating apps, they know what they're doing, they know what to say, they know how to disarm someone, and they're good at what they do. The second that we start thinking that predators are stupid, we're done for, because they're not. They're very smart.
I listening to your story and reading about it earlier completely opened my eyes to, I mean, human trafficking. Yes, I know what that is. I've heard about it. I have daughters. I try and, teach them about that. However, I think of like children getting stolen from third world countries, and you don't think of it happening in the States right under your noses, let alone to 17, 18, 19-year-old women. You think of
or even children that have been adopted. I mean, there's an entire community on the internet that a family will adopt a child, doesn't work out, it's a private adoption, it's not tracked, there's no social workers involved, and these children are given away to people that are on the internet saying, we want a kid. And it's a form of human trafficking, and no one knows about it. It's not common knowledge, but it happens every single day. So when you go to the grocery store, when you check your email, when you're at Starbucks and you're sitting there on your Facebook, when you're taking pictures of your surroundings, these are all things that predators can use to track you, to get your location, to get information. I might take a selfie and it might have a random house that's no big deal, but it's close to where I live. And you can see the numbers on the house. And that's enough. That's enough. That tiny bit of information is enough for someone to pick at that and say, oh, perfect. This person just let me in. They might as well have just opened the door and said, come on in, kidnap me. So I just want people to be aware of how they use social media. And it's not about you looking at the world like it's a bad place, because it's not. The world is full of wonderful people. But not everyone is as wonderful as you are, or as kind as you are, or as honest as you are. And so, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and be very careful. You're not just putting yourself at risk when you put all of this information out there. Anyone in your life can become a victim because of the circumstances that are available to these predators. So
I think in closing, I think that is a perfect point for all of us to be a little bit more vigilant and a little bit more careful on what we post and where we do things at, and we pay a little bit more attention. You will never be sorry for taking that little added measure of precaution, but you didn't.
Exactly. And if you see something and you're like, that's not right, something's weird about that, speak up. Do not be scared, because the worst thing that's going to happen if you're wrong is that you're wrong, and that person's like, what the heck? Why do you come up here and ask me all these questions? But if you're right, if someone had taken the time to stop and say, something's not right, my situation might not have ever happened. It might have not have gotten to that point. So if you see something and it raises a little red flag, I don't care how small it is, say something. Say something. You could save someone's life.
I mean, that's why I'm here today, was because I took the phone and called the police and said something. And you never know who you're going to help. You never know the impact that you're going to make. And so I think with that being said, I think we're out of time today. But
absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes, this ran quite a bit longer.
Great. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been an incredible podcast with Cathy. And just please remember her story, and please remember her advice, and remember that you won't regret being extra precautious, but you might regret not being. And if you see something, say something. Don't just let it pass you by. So with that being said, I want to say thank you to everyone again, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Beautiful.